We were randomly coming back from a wedding in Door County and stopped in Two Rivers. It is home of the ice cream sundae.
Yes, I didn't know that.
My husband is really into ice cream, and so we stopped and saw these large wooden letters outside this building, and went in, and we were really just blown away by what was inside that building. Just the beauty of the wood letter forms, and there's something about the alphabet that we all kind of recognize and are, I think, attracted to. And yet, the more time I spent there, I realized that there were characters and a story that needed to be told.
Well, now, just to clarify, in case people just tuned in, the letterpress or the Hamilton Museum is wood type, not metal type, but wood type, and this was the dominant way of producing posters. Not billboards,
Primarily
but
posters, right?
And it was ubiquitous. I mean, it was. Your film makes it look like it was almost like convenience stores. You'd see one every few blocks.
Right. I mean, at that point, really, the print shops, they were dealing with both wood and metal type. But the film talks about in the Industrial Revolution, these people were, swarming from the countryside into cities, and there was this need to get the word out about things, whether it was jobs, whether it was transportation, and so you had to do these big postings, and you couldn't cast large letters in metal. It was too heavy, too expensive,
Right.
too cumbersome, and so wood was the answer. It was cheap and economical, and you could make ginormous letters.
What's the biggest one that you saw at the museum?
They have a huge number 2 that is, if I had to guess, I would say probably 5 feet by 5 feet. It's
Wow.
amazing.
So the essence of this museum is all these wood type letters that would be assembled and leaded, just like metal type, and to create the message, the poster, whatever. But they were, in a way, they were handmade. Now, I thought it was very interesting because they used something called a pantograph, and there's similar things in sculpture. Where if you want to point up from an artist's original, say, small model and do something, 20 feet high, or maybe not that big, but say life size, you use something similar. So they would have a sample. The pantograph has an arm attached to it, and it does proportionately larger or smaller carving with the router. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But now, the other point to your film is, it seems to be that the people that know how to do this are all quite aged. And it's another one of those skills, like, there's stone setting, and there are all kinds of things that are sort of like disappearing, crafts and trades. But let's back up a little bit. There was a time when this wood type was huge, and the Hamilton letterpress was, when did he open it?
In the late 1800s.
And he was quite successful.
He was the consummate American capitalist. Yeah.
So your film says that he was cutthroat and managed to drive most of his New York and Chicago competition out of business and bought them.
From tiny rural Wisconsin, which
From
is
little bitty town.
And the film really shows, what's happening in a lot of rural towns across the country that are post-industrial. As our nation outsources jobs, as the labor landscape changes, these towns are struggling with reinvention and what the future looks like. And it was one of the things that interested me. There's this guy in the film, Jim Van Lannen, who looked at this problem and said, I think tourism is where we can go. And so he says, we have 5 museums in this town of 13,000. There's this debate in the film, is this really going to work? Is this going to draw people in? And I think it's something that we as a nation really have to look at moving forward. These rural towns, the youth leave there, they can't get jobs. And so everyone says in the film, well, it looks like everyone in Two Rivers is above the age of 50, and it's not totally untrue.
Right. Well, and I think one of the people in the film says that when you were in her era, I don't know how old she was, that maybe it would be back in the 40s or 50s, you graduated from high school, you could get a job there. You didn't have to leave. And now there are no jobs. But back to Hamilton and the museum, there's well, relatively young compared to the other people in the film, gentleman who seems to be the curator / caretaker of the museum. It's odd because he seems like he really loves the museum, and then yet later on in the film he says it's just absolutely tedious and boring. Nobody shows up at the museum, and he's really a painter. So it was sort of curious. And then you had somebody new at the end. Now, did he leave? Was he replaced? What was going on there? Someone with a little more energy.
Right. So Greg was really an interesting character, and his life really, there was an arc while we were filming the piece of kind of his career path. He was trying to figure things out. And at Cartemquin, our films, take a long time to make. This film took 4 years.
Wow.
And when we first finished the film, things looked pretty bleak. And we, at the beginning, Greg really was very enthusiastic and earnest and really trying. And by the end, he was burned out and exhausted. And
not making any money.
Right.
Didn't they cut his pay in half? And he's like, you had the shot of his apartment that is, he's driving a nice little Super Beetle.
But I think he purchased when things were good.
But, you look at his apartment and like, man, there's like 3 sticks of furniture in there. And he was not making very much money. And he wasn't 21. He looked like he was at least in his 30s.
Right, and I think, the film, the first time we showed it at the Walker in Minneapolis, we had these 2 amazing sold-out screenings there. And the film, it was a slightly different cut. It was a kind of a test screening. And people really saw it as a call to arms. They really were saying, okay, if we have to do something. If we believe in this, the design community said, if we don't want this to go away, we have to do something. And the good news is, and I hope you all come out and see the film, but things are looking brighter, and they have a new museum director. And Greg is moving on and trying to figure out what the next chapter of his life looks like.
Well, now, just to reiterate, if you just tuned in, I'm talking to Justine Nagan live from the Heartland about her documentary film Typeface. And it's going to be screening at the Gene Siskel Film Center when?
It is. It's premiering January 29th, a Friday night. There'll be a reception at 7 and the film shows at 8. And then it'll be showing throughout that week through February 4th.